Bofang Chang, if I'm saying that correctly. Something evil or something good about every evil person. And then again, it's just like it's always on a spectrum. What some person thinks is completely heinous, there's gonna be a small group of people that think, oh, that was completely justified. It's good. There's always grays in every situation, But most of the time, someone who's inherently evil is absolutely evil. Hola, hola.
In my previous video about great people who did some not so great things, we concluded that no one can be perfectly good, and even the greatest among us have done some pretty awful stuff. This naturally made me curious about the opposite question. Who are the bad people in history, and what good, if any, did they do? Is it even possible to find something positive about those who are widely considered to be the worst people humanity has to offer? Or is there such thing as a perfectly evil person? And I don't just mean a nice side effect of something they did, like how some people jokingly say that Genghis Khan reduced global warming because of how many people he killed. No, I'm looking for actions they did that were actually good in and of itself. But even—
well, because it depends. It depends, because some people will claim that the Soviet Union was great because of its social services that it put into place. There is always these questions. Mother Teresa was not great. Yeah, just like Gandhi was not great. Everything in a vacuum looks amazing until you step outside and see it objectively. So there, you could always talk about how certain people are great, but eventually their one bad deed, like again, I could do whatever I want to do, but the second I do something heinous, I will always be known for that heinous action. Nobody will care about any kind of philanthropy I do because I did one bad thing. But sadly, people will always judge you by the worst of your situation, because it's just so easy to focus on the negative. It's so easy to focus on the negative. But yeah, did some evil people absolutely do good things? Yeah. Did what some people consider good do absolutely evil things? Yeah. Like, I don't know, like for me, it's Gandhi. I don't understand how he's so praised as this. Like, that idealism works in, like, I could understand Gandhi coming from the United States. Why? Because having not having to stress about violence on your borders, not having to worry about a lot of complications in like really at all in the United States, that there aren't many complications. It makes sense that a person like that would come out of it. Why? Because it's just like, oh, I can starve myself for the greater good of mankind. You know, something that obviously isn't going to do anything. But when you're literally dealing in a nation where you're at war with literally your own because of a partition that was separated, it changes the dynamic entirely. And you realize just how jaded and that kind of thought process, what kind of thought process does it take to literally watch your own people get slaughtered and be like, you know what, I'm gonna fast so that way my people stop fighting against those trying to eradicate my people. It just makes no sense. It makes no sense.
And if we do find something good in these notoriously evil people, this doesn't at all excuse the fact that they're still terrible human beings, and nothing nice said about them will ever diminish the awfulness of their actions. Just as how you can criticize great figures in history without dismissing their achievements, you can also learn something positive about terrible people without excusing their evil deeds. So with that said, join me as we attempt to find something good about every evil person.
For Hitler, everyone's gonna know he's an amazing painter. That's something good. That's something good. Whether it's actually good into like, well, it depends on what they're trying to say about good. Maybe good deeds that they passed. Who knows?
We'll start off strong with the man of steel, Joseph Stalin, who ruled the Soviet Union for nearly 30 years up until his death in 1953. Stalin's regime was responsible for deporting millions of its own citizens to labor camps, executing hundreds of thousands of his perceived enemies, ordering
Yeah, it's funny because like again, socialism only works when you have a slave labor force. When you have a slave labor force, who knows? Maybe eventually socialism will be the end outcome. Why? Because AI would have taken the majority of jobs, and only the people at the pinnacle will be the ones that actually do something, maintain the robots. Everyone else will just be there, literally having food brought out towards them. Like, that's the only thing that makes sense in that kind of society. The thing is, you need to have a labor force in order to have a socialist society. You need a cheap labor force, and normally it's slaves. At some point, it will be robots that are doing all the labor. So it's no longer a slave society. You just have the ones that want. You just have the ones that want, because there is no job opportunity for them, because it's far easier to have a machine that just doesn't stop than a human being that needs rest. But we're not there yet, so a socialist society cannot possibly work unless you're Switzerland. Yeah, is it Switzerland? that has it functions, but it's in a vacuum, a complete vacuum.
Warranted detention and torture of suspected civilians, and exacerbating famines that killed millions of his own people. It is therefore no surprise that Stalin is widely considered to be one of history's most brutal tyrants, with few leaders in the 20th century outmatching the scale of his atrocities. But despite all his faults, Stalin managed to transform a poor, rural, backwards nation into an industrialized superpower second only to that of the United States. Literacy rates increased from 25% before the Soviet Union to 94% halfway through Stalin's reign, and life expectancy by the time he died was more than double what it was pre-revolution. But perhaps Stalin's greatest accomplishment that many Russians today still admire him for was his victory over the Nazis in the Great Patriotic War, more commonly known to us in the West as World War II. Putting aside the slightly inconvenient bit about him purging his own army right before the war, and his less than optimal military decisions that led to millions of Soviets needlessly dying, Stalin's regime still deserves praise for bearing most of the burden in the Second World War. Under his leadership, 27 million Soviets sacrificed their lives fighting bravely against the Nazis, and is basically the reason why this video is in English. Und nicht Deutsch. Danke, Stalin. After defeating Hitler, Stalin then oversaw the beginning of a Cold War between the Soviet Union and the United States.
But that's what's funny. It's just like, so it's funny how Hitler had to challenge everyone. If he would have only challenged like Russia, there would have been a high possibility of his victory. If he wouldn't have challenged Russia and Europe, and which ended up having Japan enroll, because the US was literally backing all sides trying to profiteer off the war. And then what happens? We get attacked on Pearl Harbor, and as soon as we get attacked, we just invest ourselves 100% into the battle. 100% into the war, which only lasted just a bit longer after we got involved, because we had the facilities, we had some of the best steel manufacturing on the earth at that point in time. And so it just made sense that we had we could constantly produce, mass produce all kinds of weaponry, all kinds of tanks, but if Hitler would have only challenged one or the other, Hitler would have had a better chance of continuing, and who knows, there might have been a huger, much more giant stretch of Nazi Germany over Europe than there is today, or over Asia than there is today, if they would have targeted Russia first and only stuck with Russia instead of trying to attack everything all at once. Because when it was finally attacked by two great armies on either side, it literally could not continue. It could not continue. But if it only attacked one great army, it had a chance.
That spanned much of the 20th century, until the USSR's downfall in 1991. A popular phrase expressed by many Americans at the time was that the end of history had arrived, and the United States won, beating Nazi Germany and then the Soviet Union. That America would enter the 21st century without any more enemies, and create a world full of wonderful liberal democracies guided by the only superpower left standing. But this American dream would come crashing down to reality just 1 year, 9 months, and 11 days into the new millennium, thanks to a man by the name of Osama bin Laden, the mastermind behind the horrific attacks that killed nearly 3,000 American citizens, instantly becoming the deadliest terrorist event in
which a lot of Americans have already forgotten. It's funny how the Americans will always tout the slogan "Never forget," and only 20 years later they've forgotten. they've forgotten. They're cheering for the terrorist groups that would happily see them dead. They're cheering for all the heinous acts that these people are willing to perpetuate around the globe because, oh, they're oppressed people. They have to lash out and, you know, burn people alive, you know, take advantage of women that aren't of their belief or whatever. They have to do that. Why? Because they're an oppressed people. It makes no sense. It makes no sense.
US history. After 9/11, Osama started playing hide and seek with the American government, and it took 10 years before he was finally tracked down and killed in his bunker in Pakistan. Thanks, Obama. And here is where we can maybe find something good about Osama, since his personal hard drive was seized after the raid and declassified. After going through his files, we were able to discover that he had written letters calling for Americans to save humanity by helping to fight climate change. For the 10th anniversary of 9/11, he apparently asked his team to launch a media campaign that included an urgent plea for the world to reduce its greenhouse gas emissions. It's nice to learn that between every terrorist attack he planned, he always made sure to voice his concern about the planet heating up as well. There were some other interesting things discovered on his hard drive too. From what we can tell, Osama was an epic gamer, enjoying titles like Counter-Strike, Mario, and Animal Crossing. He also watched Naruto and Dragon Balls, as well as having this video saved, which he called Foonie Cats 4, with the Shrek theme song as its background.
Somebody once told me so much to do, so much. Hey now, you're an all-star.
Bin Laden forever changed the world for the worse because of his terrorism, and is the reason why, to this day, a miserable airport worker will scream at you for using too many bins, or harass you for having a bottle of shampoo with more than 3 ounces. So the next time the TSA is searching your balls for a hidden bomb, remember to say, "Thanks, Osama." But he's also the reason why the American government went into full panic mode after 9/11 and invaded a country that had nothing to do with the attacks because of the new Axis of Evil, consisting of Iran, Iraq, and North Korea. Which leads us to our next villain, Kim Jong-il. Not to be confused with his spoiled son and current leader Kim Jong-un, or his father.
Honestly, the son's better than the sister, than his sister. Like his sister is, if she was in charge, that there probably would be no planet Earth. There probably would be no planet Earth. She'd push the button immediately. She'd push the button. Yeah, but like, again, everyone's a human being. Everyone's a human being. Everyone has their own interests. Everyone, and that's what's funny is like anime is something almost anyone can relate to if they actually sit down and watch it. And what's funny is like you're targeting the US for like not enough green initiatives. The US utilizes, has like the least amount of like O2 put into the air, because again, if your factory has just a tiny bit of particles that go out into, like, you know, when they're burning and everything like that, that go out into the air. If you're driving through the US and you go past factories, it's nothing but clean white smoke coming out of these very like these farm industrial plants. Nothing but white smoke. You go somewhere else, it's tar black smoke. Like you drive through India, I've been through there. You'll look off to the side where they're burning something. It's just nothing but tar black being released, because the US was literally the only one putting into like the green initiative when it should be a world's problem. Why is the US paying for something nobody else bothers to do? I'm all for making sure that the air coming out of like factories and industries is clean. Absolutely. But the US shouldn't be responsible for the rest of the world having to make sure its air is clean. But at the same time, the US also shouldn't be around the world policing everybody. That's one of the US's biggest problems, is being out there trying to make sure, oh, you need to follow our rules. Like, no, each nation has their own rules. Let each nation deal with everything how they want. The US doesn't need to have bases everywhere. We don't. We really don't.
Who created North Korea, Kim Il-sung. While obviously subjective, it's reasonable to argue that out of the 3 leaders in North Korea's history, Kim Jong-il was probably the worst. He somehow had both Stalin's disdain for human suffering, as well as Osama's cold-blooded ruthlessness toward innocent civilians. Like Stalin, he completely neglected millions of his own citizens who were starving to death, stubbornly insisting that North Korea's glorious juche, or self-reliance ideology, would be able to feed everyone without help from other nations. It wasn't until the country turned into hell on earth and people resorting to eating grass, bark, and rats to survive when the government finally admitted to the world that they did indeed have food shortages and begged for the much-needed aid. And like Osama, he was also responsible for the horrific Flight 858 terrorist attack, where a bomb was planted in a South Korean commercial airplane that killed all 100 passengers on board. Additionally, thousands of South Koreans, as well as dozens of Japanese citizens, have been kidnapped over the decades under Kim Jong-il's orders. Despite all these crimes against humanity, here are some good things Kim Jong-il did throughout his life. For one, whether it was out of sheer necessity or a genuine interest to improve the conditions of his people, he began to allow some economic reforms, following China's model of opening up special economic zones in the country, where a little bit of good old capitalism can function there. He was also interested in finally making amends with South Korea, and cooperated with their so-called Sunshine Policy, where both states would strengthen communication with each other and work together on several business ventures to help the North's stagnant economy. Still, Kim Jong-il's brutality towards his own people and his willingness to commit terrorism abroad makes him the worst leader in North Korea's history. But surprisingly, he's not the first pseudo-socialist leader with a cult of personality almost as unhinged as Taylor Swift's. Believe it or not, that would be an American pastor by the name of Jim Jones, architect of the infamous Jonestown Massacre. What started off as just one of many hippie groups that were popular in the 60s took things for the
Cults are massively crazy. Cults, no matter what. Any kind of extremist, again, this goes under nations as well. Nations fall under extremist ideologies. Any dictatorship, any kind of, you see someone as divine. And a lot of people, that I don't know why we have a proclivity to... There's a reason why we've always, even back in the Stone Age, worshipped fire, worshipped the sun, worshipped like Mother Nature, worshipped, because we've always had an inkling to want to aspire to be something, be greater, or see something beyond ourselves. And for some reason, every time there is this person that comes around claiming to be so and so, they have they're able to speak, they're able to just sell themselves. Maybe they look a certain way that people can just relate to and be like, I want to be their friend. Or they like, how many people, it used to be so freaking common, call themselves Jesus Christ almost every year, and then they gather a following. And every single cult always seems to have the same MO. Every single time. It's so freaking ridiculous. It's so freaking ridiculous. But we as a people always want to see something beyond ourselves. We want something to follow. We want something to follow. And sadly, that makes us sheep, literal sheep. But like, because most people don't know who they are. Like, one of the biggest fears we have is, why are we here? What purpose do we serve? What's the meaning of life? Those things, even though people will continue living their life, for some reason, it is ingrained in our biology. It's ingrained inherently in us as to, you mean Asmongold is not Jesus? True. He's been wearing a red scarf, I think, like a red scarf around his neck. But for some reason, we have an inkling to want to follow. We have an inkling to want to believe someone has all the answers. And it's hard for us to go through life. And every time we just got this feeling that, oh, maybe this person's got the answers, you'll go to them. You'll listen. Sometimes it makes sense, or they'll say things that you are feeling deep inside. I mean, look at Asmongold. He's got a massive following. Why? Because he speaks his mind, and a lot of people resonate with that because that's how they feel internally. They just since Asmongold is a Jesus Christ apparently. But yeah, I don't want to speak for everybody, but a lot of people have that ingrained necessity. And we all seem to have that fear. So many people are afraid of dying. So many people are afraid of just the unknown, which is so mind-boggling to me. So mind-boggling. I mean, for me, I mean, I had a different childhood than everyone else. I was sick growing up, so I didn't know if I was going to make it to my 20s. So for me, I just had a different ideology than most people. But a lot of people fear death. A lot of people fear, like, what's going to happen? Like, where is this all going? It's like an inherent fear. And then when you hear someone who sounds confident, like they have all the answers, people latch onto that. And they follow that person till they drink the Kool-Aid.
Worse, when Jones decided to relocate his nearly 1,000 followers to any communist nation that would take them in. China and the Soviet Union rejected his request, but Guyana, which had recently formed a left-wing government, was sympathetic to his cause and allowed his cult to move in. Upon arrival, he declared this new commune to be called Jonestown, a paradise on Earth. Which, by the way, if anyone ever declares a place to be a paradise, please just run away. But one positive aspect about Mr. Jones was his genuine and unapologetic support for racial minorities, perhaps a result of either his socialist ideology or religious beliefs. Regardless of the reason, Jones was at the forefront of Indiana civil rights movement, helping to racially integrate churches, restaurants, the police, and hospitals throughout the state. When swastikas were painted on the homes of 2 black families, the pastor comforted them and implored for other households to not move away. He helped set up sting operations to catch businesses who refused to serve black customers and directly confronted neo-Nazis trying to stop him. It was for this reason why the man was able to attract such a large following in the first place, with much of his cult consisting of racial minorities who admired Jones for his truly brave actions against injustice. But fast forward back to the South American commune, where his cult was toiling away and starving for the past year. By this point, Father, as Jones was called, had implemented North Korea's system of 8 hours work followed by 8 hours of study, which was basically just him ranting to everyone about the evils of America and reading political commentary from communist nations. Hunger and disease were widespread, since the land where the commune was established wasn't fertile enough to grow a sufficient amount of food, and a lack of trained medical staff meant that no one was able to properly treat the sick. As a result, the town quickly became a glorified concentration camp in the middle of nowhere, and had to entirely rely on the social security checks elderly members were receiving in order to buy enough rice, beans, and some vegetables to keep everyone alive. Of course.
Hey, don't knock rice and beans. Don't knock rice and beans. I had 4 brothers. My parents made the mistake of having way too many of us, but rice and beans, they're cheap. And my dad's an amazing cook. They always tasted good. They always tasted good. I am always down for some rice and beans. Well, more so beans than rice. I'm more of a fan of beans than I am rice, but together they're just great. They're just great. I'm all for it. I'm all for it. But again, it was a camp filled with a bunch of white people, and yeah, they don't know how to, you know, eat proper foods.
That didn't stop Father Jones from stealing some of that sweet welfare money from his brother, Uncle Sam, to keep his personal fridge stocked with meat, eggs, fruit, and even his favorite sodas. Over the course of a year living in paradise, Jones was getting increasingly paranoid that the American government was going to come for him any day now. And that fear reached its peak when a group consisting of a US congressman, reporters, and relatives of cult members came to the compound and found a weird but seemingly harmless hippie camp. As they headed back to America, around a dozen members defected and asked the team to take them back home. Jones reluctantly let them go, but secretly ordered armed loyalists to follow and kill the entire group before they left Guyana, shooting at them as they were boarding their planes. 5 people were—
Ugh, I remember watching this documentary on the whole thing. It's just like, it was just so dark. Like, again, so many people fall under there is again, it always goes back to that mentality where people seek something and they try to see something in somebody that they follow them. Imagine you're following somebody. You've paid, like, let's say you're paying me, a retard, an absolute retard, hundreds upon thousands of dollars. You've invested hundreds upon thousands of dollars into me. And then I go around, turn into a complete wackadoo, talking about like, oh, you know what? Black people need our absolute support because they're an inferior species. And you know what? We need to aid them as much as we can. You know, that kind of nonsensical stuff. Imagine if I completely did a 180. A lot of people who have already invested thousands upon thousands of dollars into something have to commit. Imagine, like, in a lot of these cults, imagine sleeping with the divine leader. Imagine promising your daughters to the divine leader. Like, I know there was a Mormon cult that happened in Texas. Was it Waco, Texas? I can't remember, but it was just like the whole thing was a ceremony with children and everything. But the people are still, to this day, the ladies are now like in their 60s, 70s, still believing that the actions they took and the person that's behind bars is still their divine leader, because they can't separate what they did to their own children, what they did. They can't be like, oh, I was wrong. I was wrong. Because imagine how that would break you as a human being to immediately admit, oh, I gave my child to a psychopath. I literally allowed that psychopath to do whatever he wanted to me. It becomes you get locked in your own mind. It's like a self-preservation thing, because if like a mother realized that they put their child in such a terrible situation, it would be heartbreaking, absolutely heartbreaking. But that's why, I mean, we have an instinct to survive. We have it's like what is it? The survival instinct. The survival instinct. So they go down a lunacy route. Why? Because they can't break. Because the second they realize what they've done, it's over for them. It's over for them. Like, a lot of people can't live with that kind of regret or that kind of understanding of literally torturing their own child. But it's self-preservation. So a lot of them just commit 100% because they have to. They have to. Like, mentally, it's a survival instinct that's preventing them from breaking out of the cult. It's a survival instinct.
Killed, including the congressman, but the rest were able to escape into the jungle and were eventually rescued by the local government. Immediately after ordering the attack, Jones knew his political project was now officially over and ordered his followers to commit what he called revolutionary suicide by drinking Kool-Aid laced with cyanide. People were breaking down and crying as they realized what they were now instructed to do, and the camp guards killed anyone who dared to refuse. Nearly 1,000 people in Jonestown were not just persuaded to end their own lives, but also their children's. And when outsiders arrived at the deadly scene, the people's paradise, now littered with countless dead bodies, looked like the aftermath of a Mongol invasion, because no one could have left a scene more gruesome than Genghis Khan, the quintessential archetype of a barbaric warlord. The Mongol leader is best known for rapidly creating the largest contiguous empire in human history, through deadly conquests, massacres, and pillaging. As mentioned at the start of this video, Genghis Khan's indiscriminate annihilation of any population who resisted meant that an estimated 10%
video is
of
something
the
good
entire
about
world's
every
population
evil person. Something good about every evil person. What's something good they have done? If any.
was killed. 1 in 10 people died under the Mongols. To put it in perspective, 3% of the world's population died in the Second World War, which means we would need 3 World War IIs back to back to back to even come close to the scale of human life loss that Genghis Khan brought onto this earth. You may wonder, how exactly did he conquer so much in such a short time? Well, ancient terrorism, basically. The Mongols much preferred to have their enemies unconditionally surrender and become vassal states for the empire, so they could receive regular tributes instead of just pillaging them for a one-time bounty. What can I say? Bro was on that passive income grind. The Mongol ruler invented biological warfare by taking corpses infected with the Black Plague and catapulting them into cities under siege. His military strategy was so ruthless that most places simply chose to surrender. And if a single person tried to resist—
It's funny how that becomes a war tactic. Not so much the chemical warfare. I mean, that's always been done. But where you're such a heinous person, like the same thing the Ottoman Empire did. They were so monstrous. They're like they're just barbarians, but they are so barbaric that civilized societies just capitulated to the barbarians because, well, they don't want to be torn limb from limb, infected, all that nonsense. Even though, like, surrendering to the Ottoman Empire still meant you were put in a breeding lab, and all the men of past a certain age are executed, and then the boys are put in labor camps. Of course, that was the Ottoman Empire. Of course, a lot of the Genghis Khan did almost the exact same thing. But yeah, it seems to be a trait. It seems to be a common recurring trait. Genghis Khan learned it from me. Of course he did. Of course he did. You're far older. Far older.
Genghis Khan's horde would mass murder every male and enslave the women for, well, I'll let Genghis explain it himself.
From Poland to Korea, I ravaged the land. Now my DNA's in dudes from New York to Japan. Ha!
But as with any notorious person in history, Genghis Khan wasn't without his positives. For one, the Mongols were revolutionary when it came to tolerating different faiths and cultures in their domain. Up until that point, pretty much every empire would force conquered populations to convert to their religion or be killed. Genghis also introduced systems of meritocracy within his government and military, established a postal network across continents which spread knowledge around the world, and created an unprecedented peace throughout Eurasia, now known as the Pax Mongolica. But 40 to 80 million people paid the price for all this to happen, a number so large that it would take another 700 years before someone else came close to causing this much death. And that someone would be none other than Mao Zedong, communist—
It's funny how a lot of people don't talk about this as much. like Mao Zedong and how he literally took control. Again, it was kind of it's funny how the US kind of leads to a lot of problems around the world with them wanting to police the world. Someone sees again, if someone needs to ask another nation for help, a person within that nation that's asking for help will see it as a weakness. And that's what happened with China, because the US was aiding China during World War II. Aid them from Japan, because Japan was constantly conquesting over. So they were seeking aid from both America and Russia, primarily America, which Mao Zedong saw as a complete weakness, that he was able to take absolute control.
Revolutionary and founder of modern-day China. Now, it would be wrong to believe that the deaths Mao caused were in any way comparable to Genghis Khan, since Mao's case was mostly due to his failed policies, paranoia, and gross negligence. But in Genghis's case, it was just cold-blooded murder. Still, that doesn't excuse the inhumane lack of concern Mao had for the people he ruled, and letting tens of millions of them die because of a stubborn commitment to uphold an ideology is still pretty evil. Mao's tenure as leader of China started off with great promise, but quickly turned into a disaster when he implemented his infamous Great Leap Forward campaign, forcing millions of farmers to stop growing food so they could make steel in the hopes of selling it abroad to generate more money for the revolution. This had double the horrible result, since it turns out ordering a bunch of farmers to try to make steel out of makeshift furnaces in their homes just results in garbage tier unusable metal you can't sell. And oh, those farmers weren't farming, so now you also just starved tens of millions of people to death. After Mao's little oopsie, senior party officials finally decided to rein him in a bit and reduce his control of the country. But Chairman Mao's ego was too strong for their weak attempt to restrain him, and he subsequently launched the Great Proletarian Cultural Revolution, which was mostly just an excuse for Mao to consolidate his own power, enforce a permanent cult of personality around him, and purge the nation of undesirables, or basically anyone who he thought was against him. Mao's reign wasn't all bad, however. In fact, many Chinese people today believe that the Great Helmsman, as he was called, was 70% correct and 30% wrong, a phrase that was originally uttered by Mao himself when he assessed the legacy of Stalin. Before the communists took over China, the nation had been a rigid, outdated society that was restrained by thousands of years of strict Confucian philosophy. Compared to the growing but still insufficient freedom women had in many other countries at the time, Chinese women held even fewer rights, with forced marriages being the norm and divorce only available if the man wanted it.
Hey, come here, look at me. Hey, look at me. What'd I say? No. Come here, look at me. Hey, look at me. No. Come here, look at me. Hey, look at me. What'd I say? What? No. Come here, look at. Hey, look at. You wanna get? No.
Additionally, 90% of the population were peasants who were often forced to pay insanely high rents to oppressive landlords, causing hundreds of millions to suffer generation after generation, dynasty after dynasty.
See, the funny thing is like, this is a nation doing it to itself. But like what India went through, it was the British Empire literally doing it to another nation. So China literally forced itself down the rabbit hole, which is, well, the system it's in. But the 70% right, 30% wrong. I mean, eventually a lot of people will just start towing the line. If you eradicate enough of the naysayers, and this is the problem with like a dictatorship, if you control the narrative long enough, everyone will believe it. And the people who don't will keep their mouths shut because they know what happens to those who have any sort of free think. They're removed from the board. Which is why I always get confused as to why so many people want that kind of mindset where, oh, we want everyone to think clearly. We want everyone to be able to have an opinion, but you're only allowed to have our opinion. You're only allowed to say what we want. It's like it's a dangerous slippery slope. But if you control the narrative long enough, you can literally convince an entire nation you've done right. And what's funny is like some people are still alive from the entire transition. Are still alive. They remember how it was. They see how it is now. And sure, China has massively progressed. But at what cost? How many people? And again, just like the one-child policy, which has massively backfired. Because now, a lot of them are refusing to have kids. Like, they just don't want to have children. There are, and also, the wanting a male child. Because they wanted primarily male child, and there was only one child allowed, that there are far more men than there are women. It's funny how all these policies seem to cause more problems, because as soon as the elderly generation is gone, the original generation that worked in the well, I guess their farms, which turned into steel mills. After that generation passes, there's going to be like barely anyone left. Barely anyone left.
Dynasty. When the communists took over China, Mao completely eliminated the landlord class, both figuratively and literally. As a modern-day peasant myself, I have to admit that I sometimes have a bit of Mao in me every time the landlord raises my rent. And because of silly things in life like housing, food, and gas, this might actually be the last time I'm able to make a video of this kind. The unfortunate truth is that videos like these take thousands of hours of me researching, writing, recording, coming up with stupid memes to make you blow air out of your nose, sourcing thousands of documents and footage from archives and libraries, and spending countless nights putting everything together. Unlike bigger YouTubers who can afford to have a team of 10 people so they can publish videos 10 times more often, everything you see here is done by just one person, me. Frankly, YouTube and sponsors don't really care about how much time and effort a video takes. They just want creators to pump out as much easy slop as possible to make the most amount of money. But I don't worship money, which is why I don't want to spam you guys with mindless garbage that takes zero effort. I want to spend the extra time to make the best content I can. For you, the viewer. The only problem is that without your help, it's just economically impossible for me to keep doing this. And it doesn't help that I make videos about war, tragedy, death, politics, as well as past and current issues that are deemed controversial, and therefore have had and will continue to have my videos demonetized. There's a reason why ad-friendly YouTubers outnumber creators like me by 1,000,000 to 1, and I don't blame them at all. If they make videos like mine, they wouldn't be able to survive either. My only hope is that enough of you watching can help me keep a roof over my head while I continue to make more videos for you to enjoy. So if you are one of the special few who can make a real and positive impact to someone's life, please consider supporting me on Patreon or YouTube, where you'll get early access to new videos, have your name shouted out to millions of people, and get exclusive content after every video. Now back to Mao. Furthermore, the Chinese writing system was more or less the same for over 2,000 years, making it completely—
That is kind of sad hearing all that. Of course, my stream crashed halfway through as he's talking about his hardships, but that is kind of sad about how, since he's on a lot of difficult topics, that he can't get his monetization. And a lot of people, they try to do this as a career. They try to be informative as a career, and that truly is tragic because, well, I'm a retard. I'm not informative whatsoever. Let's just be honest here. Let's just be honest. I'm a retard. I'm not informative. I'm here to have fun. I'm here to have fun. But the fact that there are a lot of people out there trying to create informative content, and then a lot of the time, well, they make nothing off of it. They make absolutely nothing off of it because it just goes nowhere. It goes nowhere for them, that they have to rely on other people, well, aiding them out, aiding them entirely. Did the stream end? No, the stream crashed. It absolutely crashed. And here I thought I got the internet working properly. Who knows? Hopefully better tomorrow.
impractical for any ordinary citizen to be literate. Opium use was widespread and ruined people of all social classes, regardless of what—
It's the fentanyl zombies, but in China.
wealth. Thanks to Chairman Mao, archaic rules for society were abolished, healthcare and education became accessible to the masses, and the government encouraged women to participate in politics and work in roles that were previously only reserved for men. A popular phrase by Mao was that women hold up half the sky, something that Biden apparently loves to quote, "based." The chairman is admired by many in China for finally unifying a country that had been plagued by civil wars and foreign invasions for over a century, an achievement neither the previous nationalist government nor Qing dynasty ever accomplished. One of the most impactful decisions Mao made was at the end of his life, when he met with President Richard Nixon, drastically altering the global world order and permanently shifting the balance of power from the Soviet Union to China. Mao's historic summit paved the way for the People's Republic to break into the international scene, and finally establish itself as the one true China. This meeting, however, could not have been possible without the help of one particular American, who had secretly visited China the year before, in order to set up this event in the first place. That person, today considered to be an old friend of the Chinese people, was Henry Kissinger, the man who forever changed America and its relationship with the world. When touring Southeast Asia, the late Anthony Bourdain famously wrote, "Once you've been to Cambodia, you'll never stop wanting to beat Henry Kissinger to death with your bare hands." And it wasn't just Cambodia. You see, as President Nixon's Secretary of State, Kissinger managed to gain unprecedented power over America's foreign policy during the Cold War in the 70s. With Nixon's trust, this meant that Kissinger was able to control much of what the United States did abroad, and his unapologetically amoral realpolitik philosophy resulted in decisions that can be categorized as nothing short of war crimes, all in the name of advancing American interests. Some of his greatest hits include his involvement with illegally bombing Vietnam, Cambodia, and Laos, overthrowing the democratically elected leader of Chile and installing a military dictator in his place, supporting Indonesia's invasion and occupation of East Timor, greenlighting state terrorism.
Honestly, you could easily create a list of how many mistakes America has absolutely made involving itself in other nations' policies. It's absolutely insane. It's absolutely insane. But the problem is the U.S. wants to be the big kid on the block. It wants to have the most fingers and the most pies. That's what the U.S. tries to do. That's what the U.S. always tries to do. But it's rather tragic. It's rather tragic that hopefully he comes out with a video. It's just like all the problems the U.S. has caused.
And death squads in Argentina, and straight up funding a genocide in Bangladesh. Each one of these events directly led to decades of dysfunction, misery, and violence for hundreds of millions of people around the world, with many still suffering the effects of Kissinger's policies to this day. And perhaps the most astonishing fact of this all is that Mr. Kissinger managed to win a Nobel Peace Prize for his incredible, totally not psychopathic work in Vietnam. Kissinger and his ideology are a large reason why many nations outside the West continue to distrust the United States to this day. Those in the West, however, view him as a great statesman who simply acted in the best interest of America.
Nope. A lot of people don't, but for some reason, it's just most people don't seem to. Everyone just seems to assume that everything America. Okay, a lot of retarded Americans seem to assume that whatever America does is either outright evil or whatever America does is outright good. For a lot of people, like this is the extreme left, the extreme right, there is no middle ground. There is no middle ground for them. And this has been the case for a long time. I mean, this is going to be the America's 250th birthday. And that has just been the case. A lot of people will always assume that America's always doing the best. A lot of Americans will assume. And then a lot of Americans will assume that also it's only doing the worst. And these people are just complete polar opposites of each other. And then there are those of us in the middle ground. It's just like, yeah, America is just a child on the playground. They're going to be stupid. They're going to be absolutely stupid. Of course they are. Of course they are. Every nation is absolutely retarded. No, not a single one is going to do something that's best. That is outright 100% perfect. Because it's impossible. It's absolutely impossible because there's we people are just way too unique and individualistic. You'll never have this hive mind think. We'll never have this insect planet where there's only one queen and everyone else just follows like a drone at the behest of a queen. Like that's never going to happen. Well, unless I guess AI takes full control and we end up in like what is it, the Matrix movie where the AI took control over the planet? Like maybe, but that's not possible. That's not possible.
What they can say about Kissinger is that he helped to establish a détente with the Soviet Union and negotiated nuclear arms control agreements between the two superpowers. And while his help in opening up China led to serious side effects for the US, it undeniably resulted in over 1 billion people being able to climb out of extreme poverty. Also, on the more personal side, Kissinger was a Jewish child growing up in Nazi Germany and managed to escape the country with his family just a year before World War II began. Regardless of how you feel about who he came to be, it is indeed admirable that a boy who was persecuted by the Nazis grew up to become a man who fought against the very same regime. But I will conclude.
Do you think Lord Elon takes us to Mars? It would solve all our problems? It wouldn't solve any problems. It would not solve a single problem. Like, that's what people don't seem to understand. Like, they think as soon as they have their perfect utopia, everything will be solved. That's next to impossible. because you have the people in charge, they call themselves leaders, who are frail human beings who will either pass on their whatever they created to an incompetent person, or they will become problematic and do things that is against what the people themselves want. You'll never have a utopia that's completely idealistic. In the end, we're going to run into the same exact problem that we have run into as a species for the last several thousand years. Human error. We just get in our own way. Human ambition, human greed. We are the massive blight here. That's why I prefer people be patriotic and love the place they live, rather than believing that the place they live should capitulate to whatever belief or whatever they might have. You'll never see one-to-one. And guess what? If you don't agree wholeheartedly with one like where you live, there's a nation out there that most likely has more in line with what you agree with. Just move there. Just move there. Pack up, completely travel. It's not that expensive, surprisingly, to uproot and get a visa and then travel somewhere and then just plant yourself there and start from scratch. Yeah, will it be annoying? Absolutely. Absolutely. But life itself is bad. Is bad. Kissinger described U.S. the same way we describe Hassan. To be U.S./Hassan's enemy is dangerous, but to be his friend is fatal. Yeah, it's like shooting your own foot at that point. You never get help. You never get aid. It's not about being a friend. It's about climbing a ladder. It's about climbing a ladder.
By quoting from the same paragraph I began with. Witness what Henry did in Cambodia, the fruits of his genius for statesmanship, and you will never understand why he's not sitting in the dock at The Hague next to Milosevic. While Henry continues to nibble nori rolls and ramaki at A-list parties, Cambodia, the neutral nation he secretly and illegally bombed, invaded, undermined, and then threw to the dogs, is still trying to raise itself up on its one remaining leg. What Anthony Bourdain is referring to was not just America's bombardment of Cambodia, which itself killed hundreds of thousands of civilians, but what also happened as a result. Thanks to Kissinger, what was once a fringe, minor communist movement in Cambodia exponentially grew more and more popular as Cambodians continued to be senselessly killed in these bombing campaigns. And the leader of this insurgency that eventually took control of the country was a man no one had heard of, who went by the name Pol Pot. Considering that I already made an entire video on the horrors of this man, we can mostly focus on whatever good I found about him. But to quickly recap in case you forgot, Pol Pot was leader of the Khmer Rouge, a Cambodian communist party that became popular after Nixon, taking Kissinger's advice, indiscriminately bombed Cambodia, which allowed them to eventually win a civil war against the American-backed Cambodian government at the time. After taking power, Pol Pot enacted a series of disastrous policies that forcibly cleansed millions of people from the cities to the countryside in order to create an agrarian paradise on Earth. Given that these supposed urban demons hadn't developed any skills related to farming, and that there was no infrastructure, planning, or feasible way to suddenly have millions of people live in the countryside, starvation was widespread throughout the 4 years under the Khmer Rouge. But starving was honestly the least of their worries, since from the top down, Pol Pot was maniacally paranoid of foreigners, ethnic minorities, and his own people, which meant that everyone left and right were accused of subverting the revolution, and forced to-
He's just... That's what happens when you get an absolute racist in charge. Because no matter what, or an absolute liberal in charge, no matter what, they'll hate everyone and they'll fear everybody. In the end, that's just what happens. Because everyone's out to get them. I mean, what is it right now? Everyone is Israel? To, well, one specific streamer. Oh no, I got banned from Britain. Israel did it. Oh, my dog got electrocuted. Israel did it. Oh, everything's Israel. Everything's like, again, you always find the ghosts in the walls. You become a paranoid person, and that's absolutely sad that people end up going down that route when it's easier to just be like, no matter what, nobody will think what I do is great. It's better to just understand. Again, what's funny is the ideology I live my life by. What I think of myself, what my significant other thinks of me, and what God thinks of me. Everyone, if they just thought that way through life, they'd be happier. they'd be happier. Because the problem is, so many people are afraid of what other people might think. So many people are afraid of how others will react, that it causes them to be preemptive in their retaliation towards what they think the people will rise up and attack them. And especially in a place like like a dictatorship or some kind of place of power, you're going to harm a ton of people if you're a paranoid person. You're going to start targeting the innocents when that shouldn't be the case.
Produce false confessions of their supposed allegiances to the Americans, Soviets, or Vietnamese, all of whom were Pol Pot's foes. By the way, if you somehow found yourself being hated by both America and the Soviet Union, you probably messed up. After torturing and killing enough ethnic minorities, class enemies, and Cambodians, the Khmer Rouge started killing off factions of their own group within the organization, with everyone from Pol Pot himself to the lowest-ranking cadre paranoid of being purged and killed next. Seriously, check out my video on this entire subject. My short explanation here doesn't even come close to describing just how insane Pol Pot's Cambodia was. With that in mind, it is especially difficult to find anything this man did in his life that could be considered remotely good. A close contender would be the fact that despite absolutely having the power to do so, Pol Pot wasn't all that interested in building a cult of personality like his fellow comrades Mao, Stalin, or Kim Il-sung. One reason for this could be the fact that he reportedly found joy in deceiving others and remaining elusive, often going by various pseudonyms and lying about himself to other people. That, or it was his sincere hatred for individualism. So the only good thing about Pol Pot seems to be his surprisingly compassionate treatment toward his wife and especially daughter, who still expresses fond memories of her father to this day. I guess even the worst of us can still have the capacity to love someone. Even now, Cambodians continue to suffer from the illegal bombing of their country and subsequent Khmer Rouge regime that followed. Because of Pol Pot, in less than 4 long years, up to a third of Cambodians tragically died, with the remaining survivors seriously injured, starving, imprisoned, or displaced from their homes. Pol Pot is therefore rightfully considered to be one of the deadliest dictators in human history, with pretty much no one else outmatching the proportion of deaths he caused. Okay, there might actually be one more person who can compete with Pol Pot in terms of deadliness. That would be King Leopold II, ruler of Belgium and her territories abroad. And that last part is especially important, since he's most notorious for having committed some of the worst atrocities in history against the people living in his colony. During the European scramble for Africa, Belgium was no exception, and the king wanted first dibs on an area in Central Africa, calling it the Congo Free State. Leopold convinced the international community that his goal was to provide humanitarian assistance to the region and bring civilization to the population. But in reality, this free state was more of a sick private venture of his, enslaving millions of people to extract as much wealth as possible for his own personal fortune.
But they're not humans. Don't you understand? They're not humans. Anyone that isn't me is not human. That's literally the ideology that you fight against these people. They view themselves as the epitome of society, as the epitome of humanity. Everyone else, even those that might assist them, are inferior to themselves. Which is why a lot of these people believe like they want themselves to be in charge. They want to dictate how the world operates. It's not about everyone being able to speak. It's about them being allowed to dictate to everyone what they should be speaking on. They want to silence everybody. That's the problem with these. Like, that's why as bad as the freedom of speech is here in the United States, because we end up with people that absolutely hate our own nation, it's a benefit. It's a benefit because we are able to speak against our own government. We can complain when our government's doing something absolutely retarded. Where in some nations, I'm not going to say specifically which, but we've seen a few pop up here, you will disappear if you say something negative about the nation. You will just upright and disappear. What happened to him? Oh, we don't know. He might have fallen ill. He's probably in a hospital somewhere. Because you're not allowed to speak against the nation you are in. And a lot of people don't seem to realize how much of a blessing that truly is. That they will, especially in the US, a lot of the morons who claim that they're being targeted for their free speech constantly hate the nation they're in, will praise nations that if they said anything similar against the nation like they do towards the US, that they praise so much, they would be incarcerated for immediately because you're not allowed to speak ill of the nation. But here you're allowed to badmouth it all you want because it allows us to be able to feel free. I'm not in terror that my door is going to be kicked in. I mean, maybe if I don't get a visa for my wife, I might have ICE kicked down my doors. But other than that, that'd be a failure on my part for filing the paperwork wrong. But that's basically it. But that's a known issue. That's a known issue. If you don't go through the right steps to get here legally, then guess what? You're at risk. You've broken the law. That, well, ICE will show up and knock down your door because you broke the law. You broke federal law.
The king would rent out pieces of the colony to private corporations and give them free reign to basically do whatever they want in their land to maximize their profits. With an explicit blessing from Leopold, these companies effectively turned their local populations into slave labor in order to exploit the region's rubber.
It's not slave labor. Well, I guess they weren't illegal immigrants, because this is the type of labor that America wants. Well, certain groups in America want by bringing back the illegal immigrants because they're cheap. They're cheap. They can force them to work.
Resource that was in high demand at the time. Anyone who refused to work for the
people from the U.S. have the most freedom, think they have no freedom. Yeah, because they get stopped and spoken to about something. They're protesting on the streets, rioting, and then they get arrested for rioting, and then they go like, well, I was just protesting. Standing on the side of the sidewalk holding up a sign, that's protesting. Out in front of the courthouse, holding up a sign, maybe shouting a thing or two, that's protesting. Standing in the middle of the street, blocking traffic, blocking people from getting to their jobs, burning cars, assaulting people, that's a riot. That's a riot.
Corporations could be killed, and entire villages would be wiped out to coerce the rest to comply. For those who complied and became Leopold's slaves, life was hardly any better. Everyone was obligated to meet extremely demanding quotas, and failing to harvest enough rubber was punishable by death. King Leopold wanted to run the colony as cheaply as possible, which meant that wasting precious supplies was a big no-no. This mentality went all the way down to the bullets hired soldiers would use against the enslaved population. Precious supplies was a big no-no.
Non-non? That says non-non, right? That says non-non. That just popped out. For a second, I thought it said now. I'm like, oh, you said no. Why does it say now? But it's non-non. It's non-non.
This mentality went all the way down to the bullets hired soldiers would use against the enslaved population. In order to ensure that these mercenaries weren't misusing them to hunt for food or sell for money, every bullet fired required a right hand to be brought to their superiors as proof that it was used for the right purpose, which was to maintain Leopold's plantation and kill anyone who resisted. But why their right hand? Well, smartphones weren't a thing yet, so the soldiers couldn't just DM their boss a photo of the person they shot, and dragging the entire body back to base wasn't really practical either. So they figured, if you could bring back someone's right hand, it's pretty reasonable to assume that you did indeed use a bullet on them. As a result of this atrocious policy, severed hands quickly became a form of currency to compensate for using bullets or even failing to provide enough rubber. Soldiers who were in charge of collecting harvest quotas often resorted to cutting off the hands of innocent victims, so they themselves would avoid being punished when they didn't bring the required amount of rubber. Family members would be kidnapped and taken as hostage to force people to work. Villages that fell behind their quotas would have their leaders imprisoned. Starvation was widespread, since anyone able-bodied was now forced to extract rubber instead of producing food, and companies would often steal the few remaining crop and farm animals for themselves. Children were kidnapped to be workers or soldiers. Cannibalism from Leopold's army was tolerated since it helped to instill fear and discourage rebellion. For over 20 years, King Leopold took an area that today would be the 10th largest country in the world and transformed it into a dystopian nightmare that somehow combined the brutal efficiency of a corporation with the lethal power of a state. If it wasn't for his desire to have his own colony and make more money, King Leopold II could have very likely been remembered for the many buildings and projects he commissioned throughout his 44 years of reign. To this day, many of the works he built still stands in Belgium, and his nickname at the time was the Builder King. But ultimately, Leopold's actions in the Congo represent everything wrong with colonialism, and serves as a textbook example of the system failing to provide any benefit to the people living there, only enriching the foreign power that took control. What's especially disturbing about King Leopold is that he never once stepped foot in his own colony that he turned to hell. At the cost of up to 10 million lives, or roughly half its population, Leopold was able to profit 70 million francs throughout his reign of terror in the Congo. But 70 million, even adjusted for inflation, is nothing compared to the $70 billion that was amassed by the most notorious drug lord in the world, Pablo Escobar. Considered to be one of the wealthiest criminals in history, Escobar grew up in poverty and started off—
That is funny though, how great stream keeps crashing over and over. I don't know what's going on. It's kind of annoying. It's kind of super annoying. But it keeps happening. But I find it fascinating because it's just like, how many people did he lead to slaughter just by being uninterested, I guess? I think that's the best way to say it. He's just uninterested. He wanted everything for himself. And I think that is why, like, Britain, especially like after World War II, tried so hard to get out of India because, well, what happened with now Leopold II is known for his atrocities. Absolutely known for his atrocities. So Britain probably realized that, and they're like, you know what? We have kind of stolen everything out of India. We've starved them to near extinction. We've caused a couple 100 million deaths due to starvation and overwork and just execution, that maybe it's time for us to leave. So for them, it was probably a learning, like, okay, maybe even though we're at the epitome of our empire, we probably shouldn't do this because everyone's starting to find out everything about everybody. And it doesn't look very good. So what did Britain do? They happily left. And allowed India to basically fall apart completely. They allowed India to completely fall apart around them due to the partition, that now that people are finding out exactly, because that's what's funny. A lot of people didn't know what happened for decades in India. Why? Because India was constantly under basically its own schism, having to deal with every threat along the borders. And now that the world is so small, people are realizing the absolute atrocities that have happened, that, well, it's pretty late now. You can't seek ramifications anymore, because it's just too late. It's too late. You could give the diamond back, but that's never gonna happen. You could try to bring back the lives of all the people that were starved to death, but that's never gonna happen. Yeah, because Britain's lost. Britain's lost. I mean, pretty soon the diamond will be owned by the the soon-to-be UK Arabic Empire. United Kingdom I don't know a funny way to say it. But it's going that route.
his life of crime with the small stuff, selling illegal cigarettes and fake lottery tickets, as well as engaging in petty theft. Over time, however, as Pablo yearned for more money, power, and prestige, he became involved with more violent crimes such as kidnapping and killing people. However, it wasn't until the emergence of the cocaine trade when Escobar began to distinguish himself from the rest of the criminal world, realizing there was a massive opportunity to take control of this lucrative drug that was flowing into his home country of Colombia, and finding a way to export it to the United States. Through his natural leadership skills, logistical brilliance,
CIA on me. Yeah, they probably keep cutting my internet. I don't know why. I thought it was working fine. I thought I fixed it, and then it just kept cutting on me. Kept cutting. I suggested this video. I am going to get arrested. How are you going to get arrested? I'm the one. I'm the one here. I'm the one in the hot seat. I'm in the hot seat.
and sheer ruthlessness, Pablo Escobar and his Medellin cartel rapidly dominated this new global cocaine trade, moving 15 tons of it into the United States every day, earning him and his cartel as much as $420 million every single week. For those too lazy to do the math, that's about $22 billion a year.
Thank you. I wasn't going to do the math. I just wasn't. I wasn't.
Which, if his cartel was a proper business, would have made it the 10th largest corporation in the entire world at that time. And he had the wealth to back it up too, having been consistently ranked by Forbes to be among the 10 richest people in the world. It's pretty easy to hide thousands of dollars of unreported tips you earned from your customer service job. Hell, it's not even that hard to store $1 million as long as you're careful enough. But just like how 1 million seconds is 12 days and 1 billion seconds is 31 years, $1 billion is much more difficult to hide from the government. With With this in mind, what do you do when you're getting billions and billions and billions of dollars flowing in every single year, where you have so much dirty money that you genuinely can't figure out how to store all of it? Well, that was exactly Escobar's problem, since he couldn't just tuck his money away in a bank, instead having to resort to stashing piles of cash in abandoned warehouses, farms, and even in the walls of cartel members' homes. As a result, Pablo had to write off 10% of the money he was making every year because of water damage, rats eating the cash, and a variety of other factors that simply come with hiding that much money. Just doing some quick maths allows us to estimate that he basically lost $2.2 billion every year, which means the amount of money he was losing to rats and the weather was equivalent to the GDP of Congo, or 3 entire Cambodias. With all this money he had, you may have assumed that Escobar just spent it all on himself and his family. And yes, he definitely did all the typical things that people with too much money do, like building his own personal theme park, having an enormous supercar collection, importing hundreds of exotic animals for entertainment. You get the point. The man lived a life of luxury fit for a king, but he also undeniably contributed significant amounts of his wealth to his local community, spending millions on projects including the construction of schools, housing, and recreation centers for the poor.
You would think with that kind of money, you would just buy yourself your own nation. Like, it's already dirty money, but I'm pretty sure there's an impoverished nation out there that's willing to be like, yeah, we'll take it. We'll take it. The U.S. isn't going to come after us because we're going to be traveling somewhere else.
Regardless of whether this was a genuine expression of his love for the people, or just a cynical way to bolster his public image and political ambitions, many Colombians admire the man for doing more for their lives than their own government ever did, despite the ruthlessness of his criminal activities. No one in Colombia could stop him at the height of his power, with his well-known policy of plata o plomo, Spanish for silver or lead, ensuring that everyone from the police, to the judges, to the politicians were either bribed or, if they refused, murdered. Call it arrogance from his success. Call it anger that he got kicked out of politics. Call it the inevitable fate of a drug lord gone too big. But eventually, the king of cocaine's actions got too out of control for even the corrupt Colombian government to ignore. By this point, he and his cartel had murdered 4 presidential candidates, 60 judges, 200 court officials, and 1,000 policemen. With some...
Well, eventually you'll come across too many people that believe that the people should have a say, that, well, if you're... he was a dictator, but he wasn't a political dictator, that he ends up taking them all out, that of course, too many people will end up in coffins, that it becomes a problem, a blight on the entire nation, that the nation ends up having to ask for aid. Oh my gosh. I heard an idiot torn down Indian flag in Texas. Why would they tear down the flag? Now, this throwing tomatoes at the massive statue they built, I could understand that because it would be an eyesore. But the flag, that just seems absolutely disrespectful. Absolutely disrespectful.
Estimates totaling 60,000 people dying in his hands. He infamously ordered the bombings of a commercial flight and the National Security Headquarters in an attempt to assassinate 2 targets, but failed to do so and just ended up injuring and killing thousands of innocent lives. The government finally had enough, forcing Escobar and his family to go into hiding. Pablo's son recalled a night when they ran out of fuel, but still had plenty of money with them, so his father started a fire with $2 million worth of cash to keep his sister warm. You know you somehow messed up in life when the money you have is only worth as much as the paper it's made out of. Eventually, the king of cocaine met his fateful end when the government finally located his hideout and raided the place. His death created a power vacuum not just in Colombia, but every country that was connected to the global cocaine trade. Naturally, this led to gang wars around the world, all vying for a piece of the Escobar pie. Now, starting gang wars is one thing, but starting a world war? There's only one person in history that laid the groundwork for such a catastrophic event to occur, and then triggered it to happen. A man so hated that my inclusion of him will cause more controversy than everyone else in this video combined. A man so evil that it may be incomprehensible that he could ever do something good in his life. A man so wicked that his name is now synonymous with the devil himself. I am, of course, talking about Adolf Hitler. Now, for those of you who skipped to this part, you know who you are. I just want to say,
painter.
History ain't all about Hitler. There are so many interesting people that I covered in this video, and I hope you were able to learn about them too. But yeah, Hitler. What can I say about a man that hasn't already been said by...
Yeah, again, everyone knows like Hitler's story. There isn't really much new. I mean, I'm curious on what he might touch upon. But it's always fascinating how these people are just... They always think like they're doing something good, like Hitler. I don't know. I remember watching a documentary on it, but I don't know if because I remember his run. So World War I took place. Germany was basically attacking everywhere. And then Germany was seen as the instigator for the First World War that led to so many lives, that so many sanctions were put on Germany, that Germany was thrown back because they were basically thrown back in time because they couldn't pay anything because they're constantly having to pay out all these other nations. Why? Because, well, Germany led to the First World War. That Hitler saw open opportunity in order to bolster the German people behind his banner. Why? Because, well, he grew up seeing, or the people around him were all devastated. They were living like in a like a fourth, fifth world country. They were thrown back in time. Why? Because they were the nation was constantly having to pay everything it owned outside to other nations for them to recoup their losses. But what about Germany's loss? So Hitler literally came into power saying that he would stand for the people, that he would be there for the people, that he would be the only one there to actually fight for them. Which is why he ended up getting to power so easily, because people felt that. They all felt the devastation. They all felt the fact that they didn't know where their next meal would be coming from. That of course they're going to go to the person that tells them, you know what, I'm here for you. I've got your back. I will do whatever I can to keep you guys fed. And that gets to a lot of people. Everyone wants to feel like they're heard. And if everyone has the same problem, it becomes easier for a politician to feel like to gain power. Why? Because he's going to promise something that everyone feels deep down inside that they want, that they absolutely want.
So many others. We all know him, of course,
His
for
early
being
life
the
was in
dictator of
monasteries
Nazi
too.
Germany,
Yeah,
starting World War II by invading Poland and committing a systematic genocide against Jews, Slavs, Romani, and other minority groups considered to be Untermenschen, or subhuman. What makes Hitler's actions uniquely evil was his genuine intention to murder every single group he considered undesirable. Unlike many others I've mentioned, where they could hide behind the excuse of killing people because they were disloyal, or refused to surrender, or didn't work hard enough, Hitler had no real excuse. He simply viewed them, particularly Jews, as those who inherently shouldn't exist, and just being alive in the Führer's world was a crime punishable by death. Now, when it comes to finding something good about the man, I'm not gonna do a Kanye and claim that Hitler invented highways, or the microphone, or whatever other nonsense he said.
I am Adolf Hitler, commander of the Third Reich. Little known fact, also dope on the mic.
But surprisingly, Nazi Germany was weirdly progressive when it came to their treatment of animals. Despite his complete lack of empathy for human beings, Hitler became a—
Well, and you got to say, like, I don't want to say it. I don't want to say it. It's like, I don't want to say it. Okay, so it wasn't exactly the Hitler's party, but like one of the greatest, the first documentaries like that literally instilled a feeling in people was done by a female documentarian, a female director, which was given the opportunity, well, by Hitler. I think the documentary was called The Third Reich. I think that's what it was called. I remember watching it in my film class. And the thing is, you learn how to be like, so in order to get some of the shots, they would have people tied up on like signs up hundreds of feet in the air, holding a camera just for one shot. Just for one shot. And that basically kind of revolutionized how to do propaganda, how to instill passion and power in people to make them feel like, you know what, we're back in the right horse. We're back in the right horse. But yeah, they did do a lot of that as well. And then Inglourious Bastards took over and you saw.
committed vegetarian and strongly supported animal rights, an issue not too many people cared about at the time. After taking power in 1933, Germany became the first nation in the world to ban vivisection and protect wolves from being hunted. Animals could no longer be slaughtered without the use of anesthetics, and boiling lobsters and crabs became illegal. In true Nazi fashion, anyone who was caught violating these laws could be sent to a concentration camp. So in a twisted way, Hitler treated animals like people, and people like animals.
Animals are like they're animals. They're animals. But people, when they act like animals, they deserve to be, well, treated like animals. Of course, I'm different. I will always give the human, the individual, the benefit of the doubt, but eventually you act like an animal, you'll be treated like an animal. Because I've said that multiple times. I've said that multiple times, especially when I'm watching body cam footage. But in order to defend myself, I will never outright treat a human being like an animal unless they've deserved it or they've done something absolutely heinous.
Lastly, perhaps his greatest achievement, which saved the world a lot of time, money, and blood, was shooting a well-placed bullet at himself. But you know who definitely didn't commit suicide?
Would you please state your full name? I'm Jeffrey Edward Epstein, and my residence address is 6100 Red Hook Boulevard in Virgin Islands.
Infamous for abusing and trafficking children to powerful men around the world, Epstein is now considered to be one of the most vile human beings in recent history. For decades, the New York financier would provide underage girls to politicians, businessmen, and social elites to gain power and influence, which might explain how a former high school teacher just coincidentally became a billionaire with private jets and a personal island. Looks like Walter White trafficked the wrong product. When he was finally being brought to justice in court, it was revealed that Epstein had secretly taped hundreds of these influential men with underage girls for blackmail. This fact absolutely, definitely has nothing to do with the two guards watching him both falling asleep and then getting caught lying about it, or the prison violating its own procedures by transferring his—
Well, not only that, is as he's being investigated for everything, we have senators texting Epstein, like before, of course, you know, the guards fall asleep and he takes care of himself. He deletes himself, apparently. No one accidentally went in there and did it for him, but no, he deletes himself. You had senators messaging him asking, oh, what should I ask about this? What should I ask about this? Oh, you should bring up this person. You should bring up this person. They don't like hearing about that. The whole thing happened like during the impeachment hearings for President Trump. They were messaging this evil human being for insider information when they already knew the evil acts this person was doing. It's crazy because they don't, like, in the end, a lot of these people don't care about human beings. They don't. They only care about having their narrative pushed even more. The only reason a lot of people are all on no, let's find out about Epstein. Let's find out about Epstein. Let's find out about Epstein is because in the end, that's what everyone wanted to know. And if Trump really screwed up really primarily anything other than like, well, there are a few things, but it was like immediately, right when he got in office in 2025, 2026 now. Yeah, in 2025, he should have just released the files. He should have just released the files. That is like the biggest stain right now, because no matter what, anything after that, he'll just be like, oh, of course. How long is it going to take till he talks about this? How long is it going to take till he talks about this? How long is it going to take to, because you lose faith with people. You lose faith with people.
cellmate away right before his death, or both cameras filming who could enter and leave Epstein's cell somehow malfunctioning and erasing its footage because of technical errors. No, none of that has anything to do with the fact that Epstein had compromising information on some of the most powerful people in the world, and I'm definitely not making any insinuation that this conspiracy theory could be true. Look, I don't want to end up like a Boeing employee. But anyway, as much as this pains me to say, I somehow managed to find something good he did. Over the course of his life, Epstein donated some of his wealth to various causes through his Jeffrey Epstein VI Foundation, which, by the way, you might have thought, wow, this Jeff guy was at least cool enough to set up 6 foundations. No, the VI stood for Virgin Islands, which was where his infamous Epstein Island was located. Through his wonderful charity, he funded research on weird transhumanist subjects like genetic engineering, eugenics, and even freezing bodies to resurrect them in the future, otherwise known as cryonics. But surprisingly,
is Walt Disney in there? Isn't that the joke? That he froze himself? Yeah, that's the thing. It's like, again, I know I've mentioned it before. Like, I am a firm believer that a lot of the reasons why a lot of these people will do a charity work, or not charity work, but like donate to charities, is because they've done some heinous actions, and they're trying to buy their goodwill back. They're literally trying to buy their goodwill back. But it's like, no matter what, you eat a baby, there's no amount of money will ever recoup any kind of beyond that evil, beyond that kind of evil. But the thing is, you've got to get in the mindset of these people that have everything. When you have everything in life right in front of you, all you have to do is just open your wallet and you can pay for whatever you want. What becomes the one thing you will constantly be chasing? The thrill, the excitement. Because there is no excitement in life when you can literally get anything you could ever imagine. So this is why I personally believe they what's the one thing, the one most protected class around the world that should never be harmed, be indoctrinated, poisoned, or any kind of they're the absolute protected class. Children. Just imagine the thrill of being able to touch the untouchable. You know, that kind of disgusting nonsense. Because there are those people out there that seek the thrill. Heck, some of us who live like paycheck to paycheck, we get that thrill when we see that we have enough money in our account to go on a date with our significant other. But we get that thrill. It's like, yes, we can actually do something we can't normally do. But imagine having all of those things solved. You chase these things. Instead of finding contentment in life or finding a hobby to fill out something that they're missing in their life, no. They chase they go after the unchaseable. It's disgusting. It's outright disgusting. And these people pay to charities to try to, seek forgiveness in some way. Like those Sunday Catholics who go to church, they apologize to the Father. Forgive me, Father, for I have sinned. Oh, you know what? Just do 20 Hail Marys or whatever. Do this prayer. Oh, go and give me put some money in the donation bin, and you'll be forgiven, my son. You know, that kind of nonsense. That's what a lot of them most likely are seeking. Because anytime you hear about these rich billionaires paying billions of dollars to a donation, I'm like, oh, what'd they do? Because someone who does good deeds most likely will not tell you they're doing good deeds. It's those who do it as a spectacle, like Mother Teresa or Mahatma Gandhi, or all those who literally do it as a spectacle. It becomes like, I'm starting to judge why you're actually doing this. I'm starting to judge why you're doing this. Because if you were actually doing it for people, you wouldn't make a spectacle of everything. You will just do it because it's right, because it's good. But they want the approval. They want to be respected. They want the oh, you did a good job, pat on the shoulder type thing. That's what they're seeking. They're seeking that kind of fulfillment.
He also donated millions of dollars to science programs at Harvard and MIT. I must say though, it's a little weird knowing that spoiled rich kids in elite colleges were funded by someone who made their money from exploiting impoverished children. Many of us prefer to imagine that people like Epstein and others I've mentioned are completely separate from normal human beings, that they almost aren't even real people. And some may be upset at the way I've humanized them, that I am somehow bringing them back up to our level of dignity, when they ought to stay below us for all the evil they've done to this world. But before they became the awful people we now know them for, Pablo Escobar was studying to be a lawyer, Mao was a librarian, Hitler was an aspiring artist, Stalin went to religious school to become a priest, Bin Laden attended Oxford and was a proud Arsenal fan. So my point here is actually the opposite, that we as the normal, or good people, ought not to have the hubris to assume that we could never become the monster they became, that even if we were to have the wrong upbringing, experience the wrong events, and make the wrong decisions, we could still never end up like them. It's awfully easy to just declare that there are evil people, and then there's the rest of us, but it's a little too convenient to be true. As a child, I always wondered how it was possible for millions of Germans, Cambodians, Japanese, Soviets, Chinese, Americans, honestly, every society in history could have been complicit in the evil that occurred in their time, when most of them were either apathetic to injustices they saw, or outright participating in the creation of their very own hell. But growing up is realizing that these people were mostly regular folks like you and I, just conditioned, convinced, or coerced into committing these acts. The difficult truth is that many of us, in fact, most of us, would have also overseen the same evil as the generations of our past, and hardly any would be.
Yeah, I mean I'm liking the conclusion he's coming to, because a lot of people A lot of people are just good with the status quo. That's why I've always been like, I like where I'm at, but at the same time, I acknowledge that it's not perfect. But the benefit is I'm in a nation where I'm allowed to call out the failings of my own nation. And people who can do that, they're lucky. They're lucky. Those who are in places where they can't call out the failings of their nation, that's the sad part. That's the sad part. If every nation allowed the people to speak out, I think there would be more unification and be able to be better neighbors to one another. Why? Because there would be somewhat of an understanding, just like, okay, we know we've got a bit of a problem here, but we're working on this right here, right now. Then we'll go to this, you know, that kind of thing. Like everyone's got that a neighbor who probably doesn't mow their lawn, and you talk to them about it. Well, they need to paint their house first. You know, that of course, that's a terrible analogy, but that's the best way I can get it. Because I've always said that nations are like kids on a playground, but you also got to look at it as like it's a neighbor. It's a neighbor. It's a neighbor with their house. They got to take care of the infrastructure of their house. They got to take care of the interior of their house. They got to probably redo the paint, redo the chipping tiles on the ground. They got to mow the lawn. They got to, because as soon as something's been cleaned, it's easier to keep clean. But if you let it stagnate and get worse, it becomes harder to clean up. And some nations just need more time to clean up. It's the best way I can always break it down and talk about it, because it just makes sense to me. Probably makes no sense to nobody else, but it makes sense to me. Because everyone's got an annoying neighbor. Everyone's got that the people who just don't get quiet ever. They constantly are blasting music. They're constantly just being loud. Everyone's got that person who likes to come home late at night, likes to party. Everyone, like, there's all different kinds. Everyone's got that neighbor who refuses to mow their lawn like everyone else in the neighborhood. It's just oh, it's crazy. Information overload is good for people coming to rational POV, but too much slop and propaganda also making them radicals. Yes. Everyone's got to look at everything objectively. You have to look back and put yourself in the opposing situation. Even when I'm watching something like I'm most likely going to agree with, I still want to think objectively about it, because in the end, no matter what I watch, I will never see eye to eye with the person creating it. That's always how I've looked at life, because we're all unique individuals. The problem is there are some people who don't believe individuality should exist because they don't want individuality to exist.
The special few in history who risked and often sacrificed their lives in order to do what they thought was right. It is from this reality that I point to when saying that you and I are not as different from the bad guys as you may think. Yes, there are indeed exceedingly evil people in history that stand out from the rest of us, but Pol Pot didn't personally crush those children's skulls. Hitler didn't personally operate those gas chambers, and Mao didn't personally execute those intellectuals. Behind every one of these figures were millions of people who chose the easy way, the biologically logical way, to conform to those above and around them. We will face the wrong way in an elevator when seeing people do the same. We will deny our own eyes when others insist on a different reality. We will just follow orders when an authority instructs us to harm, and choose to harm when given authority. We will liken...
I was about to mention the Stanford prison experiment when he was talking about that, and then they show a clip. Oh, like, okay, the Stanford prison experiment, they're talking about it. When you reverse the roles, it's just crazy.
When a YouTuber asks us to do so. Please like and subscribe. This video took me forever to make, and I'd really appreciate if you can support me on Patreon. Thank you. We will even drink the Kool-Aid, as we now say, and feed it to our children, even if we know that it'll kill them. All in the pursuit to serve our hardwired tendency to conform. Sorry for the less than happy turn, but we are talking about the worst people here. So just as my previous video explored those who represent the very best of what we're able to achieve, this one serves to explore those who became the very worst of our humanity. Together, they form both parts of a central thesis on the nature of who we are, which is that no one is perfectly good, but no one is perfectly bad either. It's up to us to achieve our greatest potential in life, to try to be the best version of ourselves while remaining vigilant to our tremendous capacity for evil. These videos are impossible.
I like that. That was a great video. That was absolutely a great video. I'm gonna need to subscribe to him. Put a like on the video. That was honestly, the way he broke it down, the way he just talked about everything, I had a good time watching it. I had a good time watching it because it is rather. And thank you for recommending the film. Thank you for recommending the film. Thank you for recommending the video because it took me a minute to get into it because I'm just like, you know what, it's a year old. I'll take it. But as soon as I started, I'm like, oh, okay, I like this. I like this because the title honestly had me hesitant. It had me hesitant because you read it just like something good about every evil person. I mean, like, oh, why? And then I'm watching, I'm just like, oh, okay. Well, that kind of makes sense. Because again, it's about how we're all human beings. We're all human beings. But eventually some people, like for me, I'm, again, I'm not a violent person, but if anyone came after my family, I'd have no problem going like, what is the guy in, I can't remember, the guy in Game of Thrones who literally peeled people's skin off while they were alive, the guy who literally turned Rick into a puppet. Yeah, I'd literally go that route if anyone ever came after my family. Like, I'd have no problem because for me, it's my family what's important. It's my wife that's important. It's like if anyone came after them, it's just like they're gonna live a very short but very painful rest of their life. Because I'd be incredibly violent, because I'd be incredibly protective of my family, and an eye for an eye. Well, actually, if they came for an eye of mine, I'd make sure I took both eyes of theirs, a couple fingers. You get what I mean. You get what I mean. But yeah, I mean, it's just, I've always said, like, these people, at some point in time, you've got to start punishing the people who step out of line. The problem is these people are allowed into power. Like, you look at the United States, we have a lot of politicians that are absolutely corrupt. I mean, the $230 billion loss that just outright disappeared that was spent on a high-speed rail. We have that animal bridge to nowhere, which is not even complete, which was like $1 billion to make when it's not even made. There are so many failures, and I'm just talking about California because I know California, but there are so many failures that happen in the United States due to politicians who, well, they went the route of Adolf Hitler, where they find something that the majority of the people feel strongly about, and they run on that. That's honestly how Trump won his first election. Because the other day I was talking with my mother how she hated Trump. She absolutely hated Trump. What's funny is in my entire family, I was the only person that was excited for Trump. Why? Because I was tired and I absolutely despise politicians. I hated politicians so much, I wanted a TV guy, a businessman to be president. I mean, it worked with Ronald Reagan. I mean, it might as well work again. That's why. And I was like the only one in my family. And then years later, it's just like, oh, okay, it wasn't as bad as we thought it was. He actually did do what he promised. But that's the thing. So many people want their promises fulfilled. The thing is, so many people run on things, playing on the emotions of people. They get in office, and then every single thing they promise the people, they do nothing with. They're just like, no, I don't care about you. It's all about me. Make sure to fund me. I'll have you. Oh no. I've got your back. I've got your back. You know, you black community. I'm definitely gonna get you reparations. Make sure you black people vote for me because I'm gonna pay you. You know, that kind of nonsense. Instead of being like, you know what? Go to the community, talk to the people, just see how they live their life. Why is it different than your life? Realize, because they're human beings. They're human beings. You don't treat them like an object that you can promise them something and then they start getting harassed because, well, the promises they've made, they can't keep. They can't keep those promises because, well, how are you going to pay reparations for people that are, well, brand new Americans that came here probably only a decade ago, 2 decades ago? And probably some that aren't even, like, that's why I've always hated the term African American. That's literally generalizing that all black people come from Africa, when there are some black Britishers who have come here, moved here, or from the Philippines, or from Mexico, or from like anywhere around the world, why are they automatically African American when they come here when most of their genealogy is from another nation? So just like, no. But yeah, I mean, that was very informative video. Very well done. I liked it. I really liked it. He's definitely worth a follow. Definitely worth you know, maybe donating to. I need to look into that. But then again, I don't have money. I do believe humans can make happen doomsday scenario, because no one would see how it unfolds with their own eyes. Humans can make doomsday scenario. I mean, humans, of course, are the only ones capable. We're the ones that are gonna destroy the planet. We definitely are. There's yeah, we humans are a frail and flawed species. But the thing is, it's our frailty and it's our flaws that have allowed us to reach the stars, that gives us the ambition to push past. I mean, look, just a couple hundred years ago, what was the life expectancy? I mean, heck, it was like, what, a century ago? We had the oldest living president at that point in time who lived to be about 69 years old before passing. And now we have a president right now in the US who's like 80, I don't know, he's 80 something. He's 80 something. But yeah, we've allowed it's that those fears that push us even further. But the thing is, those same exact fears allow us to capitulate when someone in power is able to speak and we listen. Because we share the same fears that lead us to greatness, that lead us to the stars, is the same exact fear that will lead people to sell their freedoms just for a feeling of safety. Just for a feeling of safety.
You guys got a video? It was so bad.
And don't forget to like and subscribe.
Wait, where's that?